Welcome to the Chess World Cup. 72 games on day one. I'm going to have a look at two of these games. First up is a shocker. We have Ravi Haria from England, 24-40 against Vadim Zvajagintsev. I'm pretty sure I am pronouncing that wrong. 26-08 from Russia. The World Cup is taking place in Russia. Classical games. Hour and a half each on the clock, plus 30 seconds per move. This is day one. The other game I'm going to show you is between Miguel and Ivan Saric from Croatia. So first up, let's check out this game. Ravi Haria has white, Vadim has black. e4, e6, d4, d5. We have the French defense, knight c3, knight f6. We have the classical variation, e5, knight d7, and f4. White gets 3 pawns in the center. c5, black plans to chip away at the center, knight f3, knight c6. Attack, defend, bishop e3. White is defending the center 3 times with the bishop, knight, and queen. Take in the center, take, and bishop c5. So black continues to attack the d4 square with the bishop and the knight. Queen d2. White is getting ready to castle. a6 played. White can castle here, but Ravi actually played queen f2. With this move, it actually encourages Vadim to take on d4 because it's like White's wasted move. Take, 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 and queen b6. A queen trade now happens. Take, take, and now bishop to d3. White is not afraid of the black knight coming into c4, you can just take it. Bishop d3. Is White going to castle next? No. It's the endgame. You don't need to castle. Bishop d3, bishop d7. And a typical move in these kind of structures, knight e2, because White can sit his knight on d4. This is an outpost. No black pawn can attack this knight. White knows black will go for the typical pawn break in the French defense with f6. So if you can sit your knight on d4, then it is well placed. f6, planning to break up. And now White plays knight d4, which is a huge decision, I think. Taking is actually just not good at all, because after knight d4, you may be attacking e6, but now you go e5, and black's pawns are just rolling. Knight d4. Now one disadvantage is, after take-take, White now gets an isolated pawn, but I guess you could say both sides have weak pawns on the e-file. King e7, king d2. Not afraid of any knight coming in. Also, White could play b3 later if he wants. Bishop e8, rook f1, get the f-file, now bishop g6. This is a typical way for black to trade off these bishops. White goes rook f3, rook f8, and rook f1, doubling on the f-file, take, and a big decision here to take with the f-pawn, because after knight d7, f4, now he defends the e5 pawn. The e5 pawn is no longer isolated. Rook f8, rook f3, bishop takes d3. This is a huge decision because it does give White a chance to play c takes d3, and in this position let's consider the situation. Well, White has two very well placed pawns. e5 controls d6 and f6. The pawn on d3 controls c4 and e4, stopping this knight coming in. Now the White king can put itself in the center, and then this rook can actually go after the g and the h pawns. So White has an advantage here. White's got more space. g6, king e3, rook c8, rook h3, knight defends with knight f8. Black plans to come in with rook c1, so king d2 stops that. Rook c7, rook g3, king back, rook back, king up, and b4. So White's going to play on because it's just a risk-free position. White is a perfect knight on d4, and he has a chance to make progress, getting space on both sides of the board, which is what he does with b4 and a4, and also h4. Notice in this position, this is the only pawn that is not on the 4th rank. King f7, and now h5. If given a chance, White might even play h6 next. With a pawn on this square, you're fixing the pawn on h7. That is really a fawn in the black position. So Vadim makes a huge decision to take this pawn. But Ravi, he goes after it with rook g5, h6, take, king g6. So one disadvantage to this is you have given black an outside pass pawn. But throughout this game, the pawn on e6 has been a weakness. Rook goes back, knight f8 defends, e6, check, king f7, and now a5, getting more space. 5 pawns each. In this endgame, let's see what happens. Knight g6, you attack the pawn, but doesn't mean you have to defend it, because if you play a careless move like this, maybe the rook can come into c3 and then actually do something. But that's the thing. After knight g6, but just because you attack my pawn doesn't mean I have to defend it. He goes b5. Because you cannot take, because rook f1 is just going to win the knight. take, take. And with this move, you actually give white a chance to play knight d6 check. White is making serious progress. King g7, getting out of the check, knight d6, rook a8. Vadim, he doesn't even defend it. He goes after the a5 pawn. If rook b8, you have rook b1. a6 coming next. You even have f5. He doesn't even defend it. After knight d6, he goes rook a8. Knight takes b7. Cool move, because you take the pawn and you defend the pawn the black rook was attacking. In the meantime, this pin is annoying, so black gets out the way very soon. h5. King defends. King to h6. And now knight c5. White is winning in this endgame. You can see throughout this endgame the contrast in the activity of the knights. White's knight was always attacking a weakness. Black's knight was always defending his weaknesses. Knight e7. Planning to come in f5. He doesn't even defend it with knight f8. Because now a6, and the truth is black can hardly move. You defend your pawn, you attack this. Black cannot move. Knight e7 played. Rook a1. So Ravi, he defends his pawn and goes after e6. Knight f5 check. King f2, h4. a6. You can play knight g7, but after a7, it's over. 1, 2. And then you force promotion. So he doesn't even defend it. After a6, he goes rook a7, but now white can take on e6. King h5, king f3, stop the black king coming in, h3, and rook g1. Cool. You don't even need to go rook h1, because if h2, rook h1, the pawn is lost. So rook g1 is a cool move, cutting off the black king. Rook g1 is a huge decision, because it looks like he just gives out the pawn on a6, but now knight g7 check, getting into a winning rook endgame. Take, take. You can't play h2, because rook h7 check just wins it. You can block, but I mean, so what? You just lost. You have a lost pawn endgame. Take, take. Now rook a3, check, wins the pawn, and in this position, Vadim resigned. Rook takes d3 check, king g4, he is lost. Black had enough. Take, you can take, but why not play in f5 check, forcing the king back, and then you can take it. And the king is in time to stop black getting a queen. So a very nice win for Haria. A big upset in the World Cup. Not expected for a 24-40 to beat a Russian 26-08. Tomorrow, if Ravi gets at least a draw with black, then he is through to the next round, which would be a huge upset. Next game I want to show is between Miguel Sergio versus Ivan Saric. Miguel is 2286 from Angola. Ivan Saric, top player from Croatia. Let's see what happened. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and we have the King's Indian. White gets the center, bishop d3 castle, and knight e2. This kind of setup, the knights defend each other. White has his normal 3 pawns in the center, and black plays normally knight c6, castle, e5, strike in the center, and after d5. Not the typical move. Not knight e7, this is a bit passive. But he goes knight d4 this time. Rook b1, not even taking. If you capture, take. And after knight e2, you can defend it. And the best defense is attack. You go rook e8 first, because after knight d4, you now go knight e4. And black's pieces are just very active. The bishop on g7 is in the game. The knight on e4 is very well placed. If you go f3 to defend, you can go c5. And now you've got this protected passed pawn. If you en passant, take, take, knight d4, no. Queen b6, too dangerous. Bishop e3, queen b2, so no. Knight d4, knight looks dangerous, rook b1 first. Getting ready to go b4, get play on the queen side. Now, black now plays knight h5. The plan is you take on e2, so then Saric, he can put his other knight to f4. b4, get space, a5, a3, take, 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 and now knight e2. Not queen e2, because knight f4, no. Attacking queen and bishop, no. This is not good, and if you take, then this bishop has been unleashed. This is a terrible exchange, so that's why after here, you got to take with the knight. f5, typical pawn break in the King's Indian. Take. One way to play was f3, maintain the chain, and then Maybe a move like c6, break up the structure. Queen b6 check. Maybe trade a couple of pawns in the center because black has less space. But e takes f5 played. Take, take, and now you cannot take with a rook because g4 will win a piece. So you've got to take with a pawn. Now this does allow a flashy shot from white. He now plays knight d4. The queens attacks the knight. If you don't take the knight is going to come into e6, so black had to take. After queen h5, you could say black's pawns are a bit of a mess, but this is a very dangerous passed pawn. Queen e8, a huge decision by black to offer a queen trade. White actually says no, he doesn't even take the trade, because after take, all of black's pieces are very active, as we are going to see in the game anyway. Both rooks control both open files. That is a big deal. The bishop on g7 can be unleashed once this pawn advances. So after queen e8, queen d1, no trade. Queen e4, attack the rook. Bishop b2, you defend the rook. And rook e8. Every black piece is on a perfect active square. One way for white to relieve the pressure could be rook e1. But that's unacceptable, because you can trade. Take. And now rook a2. Black's pieces are just too active. Rook e8, queen b3, h5. Getting space and starting an attack. Rook d1, h4. Planning to go h3, so white stops himself with h3. Rook e7. Rook a1, offering a trade now. Black's pieces are just putting up the pressure. Nope. Rook a1, offering a trade. And rook e8. Black actually says no to the trade, even though he gets Alekhine's gun. 2 rooks and a queen on the same file. One cool way to continue is to take the trade. Rook takes, takes, and now d3. And black is making serious progress. d2 and also queening. It's just so dangerous. By the way, if bishop takes g7, we have this really cool move. No need to take with a king, you take with a rook. And all of a sudden, black has a mate threat on g2, and there's no good way to stop it. Black is totally winning. Rook a1. Rook e8. It makes sense for black to keep the rooks on. Just keep the pressure. Bishop c1. Planning to go bishop g5? No. Bishop f6 played. f3. Doesn't do anything. Queen e5. d3 is next. f4, queen e4. Nothing's changed except for the fact that white's king is a bit weaker. Rook a3. Defending along the third rank. But now rook g7. We saw this move before. Threatening mate on g2. Queen f3 play to stop it. But now, no way do you trade queens. You keep the pressure. Put the queen on a square, so then you continue to attack g2. So you put it on c2. Not only that, you attack the pawn on c4. c5, push, rook g3, and in this position he resigned. There's just too much pressure from black. Well, let's play on a few more moves. After queen f2, you can play d3. You can even play rook e2, and I think that might be the cleanest way. Oh, hang on, rook e2, rook g3 check. So no, you got to play d3. D3 first, then rook e2. With this move, you actually cut it off, stopping the rooks being exchanged. Now after d3, the queens can come off. Rook e2 is next. Bishop d4 check is just so dangerous. Now king h2 forces the exchange. You don't really want to do this because white is just totally boxed in. So that's why, if we play this variation, king h2 forces the exchange. Take. And now rook e2. Really cool way for black to come in. Rook d2, rook d1, forcing a way to get a queen. Take, b5, rook d2. And you can't take on d6. That's why you can just go bishop d4. White is totally boxed in. White's king can only go in a corner. You can never play this, because bishop b2, you win the rook. And in a position like this, white can hardly move, game over. Next couple moves, it could be something like this. You go bishop e3, and then rook e2. Game over. Let's see if Ravi Haria can get at least a draw tomorrow in order to go through to the next round of the World Cup. Now that would be a big upset. Let's see if that happens. By the way, here's YouTube's suggestion for what to watch next. But if you don't like that suggestion, you might like this video. Daniel Dubov, he won the World Rapid back in 2018. Now I go through his best games from that tournament. The winner's journey. However, if you don't like that video, because it might be a bit too long, you might like this one. Magnus Carlsen wins in 39 seconds against Belarus GM, Sergei Shigalko. Thanks for watching.